Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. When you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. Roof repair? Done well. Kitchen sink install? Done well. Deck upgrades? Done well. Electrical upgrade? Done well. Angie's been connecting homeowners with skilled pros for nearly 30 years, so we know the difference between done and done well. Hire high-quality, certified pros at Angie.com.
They say opposites attract. That's why the Sleep Number Smart Bed is the best bed for couples. You can each choose what's right for you whenever you like. You like a bed that feels firm but they want soft? Sleep Number does that. You want to sleep cooler while they like to feel warm? Sleep Number does that too. You have to feel it to believe it. Find the bed that's for both of you, only at a Sleep Number store. Sleep better together. J.D. Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in store. And now, Sleep Number Smart Beds starting at $999. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. For J.D. Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.
I called him up and I reprimanded him and said...
You reprimanded him?
Well, I mean, I told him, what are you doing? We're friends. I'm renting your place, and I'm going to send you the check. I'll send it out, and I mailed it immediately that day.
Okay, well, what did he say when you reprimanded him?
This is the plaintiff, Bob. He says the defendant, his former friend, agreed to rent him his timeshare in Aruba, then at the last minute rented it to somebody else, probably for more money. He'd already purchased plane tickets based on the defendant's promise, and now is owed $1,053, the exact amount he's suing for today. This is the defendant, Gamal. He says he had to chase the plaintiff, his former college roommate, for the payment for the timeshare so he could get the paperwork from the resort to complete the transaction. After hounding him for the money, he told the plaintiff someone else was interested in renting the timeshare, and whoever check arrived first would get it. Unfortunately, the plaintiff's check arrived second, so he rented it to the other guy. He's accused of ruining a guy's vacation.
All parties, please raise your right hand.
What you are about to witness is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in civil court. Both parties have agreed to drop their claims and have their cases settled here before Judge Marilyn Milian in our forum, the People's Court.
The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Milian is now presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Bob, you're suing your old friend, Mr. Gamal, for $1,053 because he had promised you that you would be able to rent his timeshare, and then he took that away from you. You tell me your version of the events.
Gamal and I entered into a agreement for me to rent his timeshare in Aruba for the same week in November as I did the year before.
All right, so you have a timeshare yourself in the same place, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you have week 45.
Correct.
And he has week 46.
Correct.
And you two know each other how?
We were roommates in college.
No kidding. You've known each other how long?
We've known each other since about 1982.
So last year you rented his place, and then, the year before the event in question, you rented his place. And then this year in question, which is what, 2021?
Correct.
You ask him, can I rent your place again? What month do you do that?
I sent him a text message in June.
All right. And he says yes for the same price. If there's an increase, it'll just be whatever the increase is in maintenance.
That is correct.
Is there any discussion between the two of you of when your money is due?
No.
All right. But do you send the money in June?
No.
How about July?
No.
How about August?
No.
But you bought your airline tickets when? In June or July?
Correct. Yeah, in June.
Okay. So when were you going to get around to paying the money?
Well, Judge, last year, the year prior, I had sent him the check the same time around September.
Right. And I see the text from him to you last year saying, what the heck? Are you renting it or aren't you? You know, like it wasn't, you did that, but I don't think he liked it. I mean, right? Like he didn't enjoy chasing you, right?
Well, I don't think he was chasing me. I mean, I know him well, and I told him I was renting and I was going to pay him.
Let's see the text from last year. He sends you in July a bill for the amount. And this is, we're talking about 2020. I got to pay the maintenance. Nothing can happen until the maintenance is paid. This is an Aruba, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But if someone else at this point in time is interested, I have to go with them, Bob. I've waited a long time, and I actually declined an offer. In August, a month later, is when you say, call me. I need to move money before you cash it. He doesn't get it until almost September, but I don't think he was happy about it because he was complaining about that in July. In any event, does he text you and say, I need the money?
No, he said, he basically, the conversation was, I need the money before to pay the maintenance fee.
Well, no, that's in 20. Now in 21, you buy your tickets in June, and July passes, August passes, and you haven't paid. In August, does he text you to ask you, where's your money?
No.
All right. So in September, does he text you and ask, where's your money?
Yes.
And and what's the date that he texts you?
September 10th.
And what happens?
He had sent me a text asking me to send the check because he was leaving for Florida in 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. Then on the 13th, he wrote and said he was taking calls for the timeshare, and the first one to send him the check would be the renter. He also said he was giving me a heads up if I really wanted to rent the timeshare, I could still have it if I mailed the check. Now, I called him immediately.
What, immediately when? After the 9:10 text or 3 days later after the 9:13 text?
When I got the text message on the 13th.
What did you do when you got the text message on the 10th?
I didn't do anything at the moment.
Okay, so now when you get the threat on the 13th that you're going to lose it, then what do?
So I called him up and I reprimanded him and said...
You reprimanded him?
Well, I mean, I told him, what are you doing? We're friends. I'm renting your place, and I'm going to send you the check. I'll send it out, and I mailed it immediately that day.
Okay, well, what did he say when you reprimanded him?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, Mr. Gamal, what was your response to him when he calls you on the 13th? First of all, do you agree he calls you on the 13th?
When he called me on the 13th, I did not pick up because when I called him on the 10th and told him my intent to do whatever, to rent it to somebody else, he threatened to beat me up.
Wait, what? You just said that he threatened to beat you up. That's what you just said, right?
Yes. What happened was...
Just a second. On September 10th, the only time I see you calling him at September 10th is at 8:28 in the morning. So if he threatened to beat you up, why do you send him a text 2 hours later saying send the check?
Well, I don't really remember the exact time when he...
Well, I have the exact time. The only time you called him is at 8:28 a.m. And you're telling me that on that day he threatened to beat you up. But I know that 2 hours later, you text him, send me the check. So I can't imagine he really threatened to beat you up. Because why would you send him that text then?
Well, because I wanted the money and I wanted to rent the thing out to get the thing out of the way.
Tell me all about how he threatened to beat you up at 8:28 in the morning.
Well, I mean, this is going back, but he got into a confrontation a long time ago at a gym with somebody. And he said, I'm going to do to you what I did to him.
Which was what?
Well, he punched him in the face, and when the guy was going down, he kneed him in the head.
So the guy threatens physical harm to you, and instead of just renting it to someone else, you say, hey, send the check ASAP. I need it because I'm going to Florida.
Well, at that
I don't
point
find what you're saying to be credible in the slightest. But you do text him in September and say, send me the check. He does nothing September 10th.
He does nothing.
Then I said, yeah, but don't embellish it. All right? Because then I don't trust the rest of it. Then on September 13th, you text him the following text. Bob, I am taking calls for the Aruba timeshare. First person to send me the check will be the renter. I think what you meant to say was the first person I receive a check from.
Correct.
Right. I am giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. I have several other people interested. And according to him, he mails the check. When do you get the check from him?
Let me look at my paper. I got the check from him on 9/17.
Do you happen to have the outside envelope to see when he mailed it?
I do not have the outside
Did you mail
envelope.
it certified mail, Mr. Bob?
No.
Why didn't you just Venmo or Zelle the guy?
Exactly.
I'm asking
I
you,
could,
Mr.
but
Bob.
I mailed a check like I
Yeah, I
did
know, but
last year.
if you already know that he's agitated and he's already threatening to rent it out, and well, isn't this like a really good time for you to pick up the phone, call him and say, what's your Zelle, what's your Venmo, what's your Cash App, what's your whatever, and get the money to him?
I mean, I could have done that, Judge, but I didn't really think it was an issue because, like I said.
When does something become an issue to you? Because the guy said, I don't know why you don't think it's an issue. Bob, please send check ASAP. I'll be leaving to Florida. You bought your tickets 2.5 months earlier. So why would you think that the place is yours just because, you guys were roommates 40 years ago? Like,
No, and I rented it from the year before.
If he
and I
wasn't
told him
someone you knew and someone you had pushed last year, you would have sent the money to make sure you got the place, right? That's kind of the consideration for the contract is you sending the money. Now he's got to provide the place because you sent the money. But you were kind of taking advantage of this situation and just kind of leaving the money on your side of the ledger for as long as you could. You kind of blow the guy off in September, too. September 10th, he sends you that, and you don't even answer. Then he sends you September 13th, and then you call him. And the reason I don't think that you remember what he said is because he didn't say anything. Because I imagine that what happened is that you left a few messages. Does that sound more accurate?
Judge, what I think is he knows I'm good for the money. That was never a question. I had mailed it to him the year before, and never at any point was I need the money by a certain time, otherwise I'm going to have to rent somebody else.
Let's talk. Well, there is a point when that it happens. It just doesn't happen as clearly as you just said. You're right. On September 13th, Mr. Gamal, you say to him, you can, if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. And he mails the check. He does what you say.
Your Honor, he did mail the check, but
right.
I also told him that the first person that I would get the check from.
That's not what you said. I would prefer that you had said that. I would far prefer that you had said that and nothing else. I would prefer that your text say, the first person I receive a check from is who I am renting to, period. That's what I prefer your text to say. Because what your text says, and I quote, Bob, I'm taking calls for the Aruba timeshare. First person to send me the check will be the renter. And then it gets worse. Then you say, I'm giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. I have several other people interested.
I started taking calls from other people because I was frustrated.
I don't blame you. But see, you and I would do business differently. I would tell him when he says, I want to rent the place, you tell him I need payment by August 5th. That's it. Just put a time limitation because, see, he's being messy because you're old friends, but guess who else is being messy? You're being messy. There's no, time limitation, and then you're angry. I don't blame you. It's been months, but put a time limitation that's clear, then he misses it, and then we move on. Or send a threat that's clear, as in, I am going to rent this out to whoever's money gets in my hands first. Which is different from what you said. But worse than that, what you say is, I'm giving you a heads up because if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check. Listen, I think it's clownish how he gets his tickets in June and hasn't paid you in September. I think that's terrible. But my job is not to rewrite a new contract for you. My job is to enforce the contract you two guys achieve, you see? So is there a time limitation in your contract? You have no written contract. It's all verbal, and you never give him a deadline for the money. You just lose your patience in September. I don't blame you. But now when you say to the guy, if you really want it, you can still have it if you mail the check, and he mails the check, what then of your contract did he do wrong?
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie, and one thing I've learned is that you buy a house, but you make it a home. Because with every fix, update, and renovation, it becomes a little more your own. So you need all your jobs done well. For nearly 30 years, Angie has helped millions of homeowners hire skilled pros for the projects that matter. From plumbing to electrical, roof repair to deck upgrades. So leave it to the pros who will get your jobs done well. Hire high-quality certified pros at Angie.com.
I don't know that we did have a contract because at the time when we agreed on this, no consideration was exchanged.
Here's the consideration. Stop. Here's the consideration. His payment. The issue is, was his payment late? Right? Because if it's late, then he breached the stop and listen.
Yes.
Then he breached the contract. The thing is, you had no deadline for the payment. In your agreement with him, he's like, good, I'm good to go. All right, I've got it confirmed. And then he doesn't send you the payment. You don't say, send me the payment by 3 weeks or else. Like, you don't have a deadline for him to send the payment. Then you create a deadline, bully for you, good for you. And in the deadline, what you say is, if you mail it today, you're still going to have it. And then he says he mailed it that day. And then you got it 4 days later. We know he mailed it because you got it 4 days later. But somebody else FedExed it to you, which is what you meant to say, I guess, whoever's payment I receive first. But
exactly.
Right, I understand what you meant. But then why do you say, I'm giving you a heads up? Because if you really want it, you can still
because
have it.
Because he was a friend of
okay,
mine,
but
and
then
I wanted him to go there.
Okay, but then why do you tell him, if you tell a guy you still have a chance to mail it, and then 4 days later you get his check, I guess he mailed it. He did exactly what you said. And instead, in those 4 days, you gave it to someone else. How big a friend?
Didn't hustle.
And by the way, he's such a friend. He's the one who said he was going to beat you up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm finding in favor of Mr. Bob in the amount of the $1,053 that he had to pay extra for other accommodations for that week.
So the plaintiff prevails. He's going to get the money, the $1,053 he sued for. Mr. Gamal, what are you thinking?
I don't really agree with the decision. I don't think there was a formal contract. It was an agreement.
What about the relationship between you two? I mean, you were college roommates. This goes back, over 30 years ago.
Yes. Well,
what's this going to do to that?
It's going to hamper the relationship. I mean, I don't think we can have the same relationship again.
Yeah, I would say so, especially when one of you says you're going to beat the other up. That's right. Going overboard, don't you think?
Yeah, I wish I had a tape recorder on my phone.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. All right, let me see what Bob has to say. Bob, obviously you're going to get your money, but was it worth it? Because this has kind of put a fracture between your relationship with your former college roommate. What do you think?
I'm sorry it had to come to this. I mean, was a few dollars that he probably got from somebody else worth our friendship? I mean, if that's how he works, then I guess so.
All right. Well, bottom line, you've prevailed.
Yeah.
You've prevailed. You got the money you were suing for, and obviously he's not a friend anymore. You won't be renting it again in the future, I would bet. You think?
That's
you agree
okay.
with that?
I agree.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I already have somebody else I rent from, so that's okay.
Okay. Good for you.
Doug, this is a case where the plaintiff relied on the defendant renting the place to him and bought a plane ticket as a result. Buying that plane ticket would be foreseeable damages in the event the defendant breached and didn't give the guy the condo, which is exactly what happened. That is why the plaintiff got the plane fare back as well.
The landlord is in Venezuela, the apartment is in Florida, and we're in New York. So how do we file a small claims case for my 98-year-old father-in-law?
Well, the question refers to a small claims case, but it really sounds like it's a landlord-tenant dispute because He says landlord is in Venezuela, my father has an apartment in Florida. It sounds like if there's any type of landlord-tenant dispute, the proper jurisdiction and venue is in Florida.
Yeah,
that's
where the apartment is.
The county court for the county that they live in.
Right.
Right. And interestingly here, the landlord being overseas in Venezuela, it would be hard to serve process on somebody like that, perhaps. I don't know if there's a management company in between or if it's just the landlord who has the place. But if the 98-year-old grandfather is owed money by the landlord, he's got a remedy. Don't pay rent, I guess, until they get it squared away.
Yeah, because they're talking about being the ones who sue. So
right.
I'm kind of wondering what it is that he'd be suing for.
Right.
But there are also, I don't know where in Florida, but there are also, 311 that you can call.
Right.
It depends on the city whether they have those kinds of services. But if there's something he's being deprived of, if they're turning the electricity off on him,
right.
There's elder abuse hotlines.
There's state or local or county authorities that can get involved in that and make sure that he's not, like you say, left to freeze to death. Yeah. Not likely in Florida.
Not likely in Florida, but left without some service.
Exactly.
This is the plaintiff, Erica Ruggiero. She says she was in the process of purchasing a puppy from the defendant, but then her aunt got sick and the timing wasn't right to get the dog. The defendant refuses to return all of her money, claiming he needed to take the dog to the vet, and that isn't an expense he should incur. Huh? She's suing for the $1,300 she's owed. This is the defendant, David Nelson. He says the plaintiff and his daughter were sorority sisters, so he thought he could trust her. Boy, was he wrong. She purchased a puppy from him, brought her other dog over to get acclimated to him, and then changed her mind and tried to back out of the deal. Because he's a nice guy, he agreed to return some of her money, but not all of it, because of what he's now out. And here they are. He's accused of pooping out on a puppy refund.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says that she was planning on buying a puppy from the defendant, but there was an illness in her family, and she wants her money back. Now, the defendant says that he's out all kinds of expenses due to the plaintiff changing her mind and doesn't feel he owes her a full refund. It's the case of pooping out on a pup.
Have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Ruggiero, you are suing Mr. Nelson for $1,300 and a puppy deposit that you want refunded to you. What happened here?
So I had met Mr. Nelson several months before I put the puppy deposit down on a previous litter. It wasn't the right time to adopt, but I really appreciated how he raised his puppies. So come November, I thought it was going to be a better time. Our family dog had passed, and I was really hoping to fill that with another. So I also have another dog as well. So I went through the process with him. I met the puppies. I would go visit.
How did you know? Did you know Mr. Nelson before this?
No. I met Mr. Nelson through my sorority sister, his daughter. She had posted a picture of the puppies on her Facebook page.
Okay. All right. So go on.
So I went through the process. In November, I started meeting with Mr. Nelson and the puppies to get my current dog acclimated. So we would meet about every week. And at the time, I was hoping to move forward with the adoption. My current dog didn't warm up to the puppy, would have nothing to do with them. So I put the deposit down. I didn't put any other money in his contract. He does have that you have to pay again. So you pay half up front, then you pay a quarter in a couple weeks and another quarter at the time of take home. So I put the initial deposit down. I didn't put any other further money down. And I told him as the take-home date was approaching, I was concerned. My dog hadn't warmed up to him. And then also my aunt was placed on hospice. I would have to be doing some traveling. And it just wasn't the right time to take on a new puppy. It wouldn't be fair to the puppy. So I asked for my refund, and he did agree to give me my refund at the time. I spent a lot of time trying to contact Mr. Nelson, and he contacted me a couple times through text saying, yes, you could, that I could get my refund back. And then he almost, what I would say, ghosted me. I would text him frequently, and then I was starting to get frustrated, so I increased my text messages. I called him. I left him messages. I was finally able to connect with him almost at the end of April, where at that time he said he'd give me $750 of the $1,300 back because it took him longer to have the puppy adopted.
Okay. And you had told him it's not the right time for me again. When?
I want to say it was December. No, it was the end of December.
Okay, it's December 23rd, according to your statement. You tell him I'm not going to take the dog, and then you connect with him when? April? Is that what you said?
So on Thursday, December 30th, after I told him on the 23rd I wasn't going to be able to adopt the puppy, I asked if I could have my deposit back. On December 3rd, he said as soon as the litter is settled,
okay,
that I could have it.
All right.
And then I hadn't been able, I reached him a handful of times. He would send, still trying to close out the litter. I'll contact you over the weekend. That was in March. I never got a call. So I continued trying to follow up with him. But I was finally able to reach him at the end of April. He spoke with, I believe it was Rachel. and then that they agreed that they could give me $750 back instead of the $1,300 because
Who
it
is
took them longer.
Rachel?
So I'm not sure who he was talking to. I thought he was talking to my sorority sister, but it wasn't.
Okay. All right. So he tells you that he's willing to give you part of the money back. And does he say why?
He said it took him longer to adopt the puppy, and at that time he had to take the puppy to the vet because it's a puppy and they need that follow-up.
So where did you guys take it from there? You obviously didn't agree to the $700, right? Because we're here. But so what happened?
So I tried talking with him, understanding that, I do understand that you had the puppy for longer than you had anticipated. I did offer that if we could avoid going to court and the fees that come along with court, that I would take $1,000 because I do realize that, he had the puppy longer than he was expecting. But unfortunately, my last text message would be like, how would you like to proceed? With that offer, he never responded. And at that time, I filed the small claims court.
Well, this has got to be awkward. Are you friends with his daughter?
We're sorority sisters, so I'm friendly with his daughter, but it is awkward because we were never super close, but it makes it very awkward.
Yeah. All right, so let me hear from you, Mr. Nelson.
Let me just clear up a few things here. The term adoption is really not one that hobby breeders use. We're not adopting dogs. Adopting, is more used when you're trying to rehome a stray dog or something like that. We're actually selling dogs. And I have two daughters that we're talking about in this case. One of them is Hannah, which is the sorority sister. The other daughter is Rachel, who helps with the breeding. And Erica had contacted me, as she said, on a previous litter.
But she had on that one, had she actually put a deposit?
No, ma'am, she had not. So
is there paperwork that you have people fill out when they're actually purchasing the dog?
Yes, ma'am. In your documents, you'll have a puppy sale contract. And in my email, if I can read that email to you, is that okay?
Yeah.
It says November 16th, attached is your contract. Please read over, print 2 copies, and return with your initial payment of $1,300 or 50%. Subsequent payments are due in 14 days. I accept cash, PayPal, or credit card. Any payment by electronic means will also include a signed addendum that states the charge is non-refundable. Return language is spelled out in the contract. Should the puppy be determined to be unacceptable in health, licensed by a veterinarian, the cause of which the seller is clearly to blame, the puppy may, upon a signed written diagnosis from the licensed vet, be returned for a refund of the purchase price. This one doesn't apply because she never took.
Right. So this is one that doesn't apply. Just where does it say non-refundable? That's all I'm looking for.
Nowhere in this contract does it say it's non-refundable, but what it does say is that the refunds only apply prior to the go-home date, and it requires a vet to have a.
I presume you've changed your contracts and it now says no refunds, right?
No, we haven't. I'll be honest with you.
Well, you should.
We're a hobby. I hear exactly what you're saying.
I mean, it takes 2 seconds to type those words in, and then there's no debate, right? Did she pay you by electronic means?
She paid me by a check, a copy of which I attached to that.
So she didn't pay you by electronic means?
That's correct.
Why? And it's just so messy. Why would you do it this way? You keep pointing to all things that are almost exactly what you mean. Just write no refunds. Ms. Ruggiero, what do you think a deposit is?
Like a reservation, where you hold your spot.
Right. When you have to hold your spot, you have to give money to hold your spot, like an apartment or you're buying a car. What do you suppose you are giving the money for?
It was to adopt the puppy, to hold my place for a puppy.
He's holding one of those puppies for you, which means that he can't sell it to anybody else, right? So you're giving up something and he's giving up something. But you'd like to walk away from a signed contract giving up zero. That's what you want.
So he did say he would give it back. So
Did you say you would give back the money, Mr. Nelson, once the stuff was settled?
She's reading what I wrote to her out of context.
How so? What does your text say?
She writes, "Am I able to get my deposit back at this time?" And I replied back, "As soon as the litter is settled," meaning not that I was going to give her deposit back, that I would discuss the issue when the litter was sold.
Well, why don't you just say that if you mean that? If you mean no refunds, why don't you just say no refunds? Instead of saying no refunds if this. Refund if that. She says, are you able to give me a refund now? And your answer is, as soon as the litter is settled. You understand how she thinks what you mean is you'll be giving her a refund when the litter is settled. So let's talk about what you are actually out. You sold the puppy eventually, right?
That's correct.
How long did it take you to sell the puppy? How much longer did you have to have the puppy?
Well, the puppy was supposed to be going home around December 30th, and she did not end up going to a new home until mid to late February.
Okay.
So during that time period, I'm required to have the pet examined a number of times to go through their shot regimen. I turned other buyers away.
Right. No, I get that. And can I ask you, what did you end up selling the puppy for?
She was sold for $2,600, the same $2,600
Same $2,600.
that Mr. Ruggiero.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to feed and house the puppy for an additional 2 months. You had to take the puppy to the vet. How many times?
I think it was 3 times.
Do you have the vet bills from those times?
Yes, I do.
Will you estimate for me how much the vet bills were?
Okay. One of them was for $530.75.
Why so much?
So there's $128 for the health certificate in the state of Florida. You can't sell a puppy unless they're examined by a vet.
Well, you had to spend that anyway, though, so that doesn't matter. And what else?
No, I had to spend it, ma'am. I had to spend it twice because I had the dog examined prior, and when I had to hold it again, I had to hold it. Those certificates are only good for 30 days, so it has to be re-examined.
Okay.
And then the vaccinations for canine distemper, the stool examination, deworming, and then we have another health certificate here along with another examination, because every time the certificate expires, the puppy has to be re-examined. That one was for $236.30.
Now, and then she bails on December 23rd.
That's correct.
So, okay. So you offered to return how much to her?
It was $750, and it was an amount that was almost at the halfway point.
Okay.
Now, if I might, not only do we have to incur these bills, there's also a lot of time that goes into these puppies.
Welcome back to the People's Court. So did the defendant give the plaintiff a sufficient refund, or is the plaintiff due a refund in full? Let's find out.
If it were me, I would probably have done exactly the math and said, look, this is what I'm out because of you. So I'll give you the rest of it, because I would find it so awkward to just have bad blood between sorority sisters. And I would explain that to her so she would understand, and because I wouldn't want bad blood. Like, did you understand, Ms. Ruggiero, that he had to go and get certificates every 30 days in order, because they're for sale and he's trying to sell them? So did you understand about all that expense or not really?
Right. No, I had no idea that process. He just said he had to take the puppy to the vet.
Right.
When I was finally able to reach him.
See, we have a saying in Spanish, la gente hablando se entiende, which sounds so simple, but it's people talking to each other understand each other. I think if you would have said to her, let me show you what I am out from your decision, and I will take this because this is what's fair, based on all of the time I had to raise that dog because you didn't take the dog, and all of the medical visits and all of the money that I'm out. This is what I'm out because of you. So this is a generous offer to you. I think maybe she would have taken it when you guys wouldn't be here. I don't mind. I got to be here anyway. So I don't mind. But, I also wish, Ms. Ruggiero, that you would review the law before you reject an offer.
I did talk to a couple people, and from my understanding, since he agreed, in the text message I had, I thought that was him agreeing to return my deposit.
I'm going to tell you right now that I agree with you to interpret it that way. Let's assume he said, yes, I'm going to give you back your money. You seem to think that that's a contract. It's not. I can make you a gratuitous promise and say to you, I'm going to give you $1 million. And then you could say to me, well, where's my $1 million? And I'll say, I changed my mind. What a contract is two sides give up something. You're going to give up $2,600. He's going to give up a puppy. That's a contract, right? I hired Douglas to,
take you on a fishing trip.
Take me on a fishing trip. There's something I was going to say roof repair, but you're.
I don't know.
I would never pay you a penny for that. So he's going to take me on a fishing trip. I'm going to pay him $1, and he's going to take me on a fishing trip, right? So there's a quid pro quo. Each side gives up something. So when somebody says that to you, I think it's crappy for them to go back on it. But morality is not my currency in this courtroom. It's the law, you see? And, what I think might be decent or indecent does not matter. I frankly, if it had been me and I was out $700 because of you, I would say to you, I'm out $700 because of you. So no, I can't give you all your money. I'm only going to give you this. But whatever, not everybody is a good communicator. He tells you what he thinks is fair. You don't think it's fair. But before you make the decision that you're just going to go sue for the return of a deposit, do you ever look into the law? Because if you had, you should have taken what was behind door number one, right? Because you don't have a right to think a deposit is fully refundable. The default position is that it's non-refundable. That's the default position in the law. So for it to be refundable, someone has to have promised you that it was going to be refundable. And you certainly don't have that.
Well, in the contract, I read it several times. I had several people read it. There was nowhere in that contract where I could find the terms non-refundable.
Okay, so here's what we're going to assume. We're going to assume that these are the facts. Nowhere in the contract does it say non-refundable. And he tells you, I'm going to give you your money back. I'm giving you those two. That's a gimme for you. Unless it specifically says refundable, the default is that a deposit is non-refundable, because that is the purpose of a deposit, to hold something. It can't be free for you. You have to give money, because otherwise he's not going to hold it for free for you. That was never a plan. You don't give me any money and I'm not going to sell my dog. So that's never an option for you, but that's what you want to make your contract. No, the default position is that the deposit is non-refundable. 1, 2. I'm going to assume that he told you I'm giving you back your money and that it wasn't taken out of context. Can I have my money back now? When I settle it could mean I'm going to give you all your money back when I settle, or it could mean I'm going to figure out what I'm out and offer you what I'm not out when I settle. Because he doesn't know if he's selling the dog tomorrow or selling the dog 6 months from now. He has no idea what's going to happen. But let's assume he said, I'm giving you back your $1,300. I'm going to go with you on that. I'm going to give you back $1,300 plus interest, okay? Unless you can show detrimental reliance on a gratuitous promise, it's not a contract. There's nothing you did differently other than wait for your money. That's it. You didn't give up anything. So there's no quid pro quo. It is an unenforceable promise on his part. So it has no legal significance for you. So unfortunately, we are in a position where instead of just taking some money, I now have to call it on $1,300. And my verdict in this case is for the defendant.
Oh, and a fascinating case about deposits. The plaintiff has learned the bad news. She's not getting her deposit back. By the way, let me ask you an interesting question. But again, what kind of puppy was this that you were interested in buying?
It was a golden retriever puppy.
And you took your current puppy over there to see if it would acclimate with the golden puppy? Is that right?
That's correct. So she turns 10 this week, a golden retriever dog.
But that's an older dog with a little puppy who's like 8 or 10 weeks old, right? You can't tell all the time. Am I right? Whether they're going to get along or not.
Correct.
And based on that, you backed out of the deal, wanted out of the deal. Anyway, that's the judge's decision. You don't get $1,300 back. And Mr. Nelson, I think you've learned something about contracts and what you should add to your contract. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. and if I might add, as a breeder, I'm very concerned about the perception of being a puppy mill or being a person who does it for the money. That's why we encourage our buyers. They have to come spend time with the litter from the time they're born until they go home.
Mr. Nelson? Mr. Nelson, that's a good ad for your services. Obviously, you care about the puppies, your puppies, and their home they go to. Okay? That's good enough. Congratulations. You have prevailed. You're in the right. And you learned something at the same time.
So I got to tell you, the laws on whether something is refundable or non-refundable, honestly, it's confusing. The rule in many states is that if it's silent, it's refundable. Because if you're going to forfeit money, it should be stated clearly. But that isn't the law in every state, and the circumstances, as you see here, differ. So it's a situation where you have to look at the full set of facts. I'll give you one example. If you buy a shirt in a store, technically, they don't have to give you a refund if you want to return it. They do it for customer service.
Why is it illegal in some states to record people without their permission, but we see viral videos all the time taken without someone's permission?
Well, you have the right in every state to videotape and use your phone to take pictures or video of things that are out in public, in the public square, on the sidewalk.
You don't have a
walking
reasonable
around.
expectation of privacy when you are in a public square on the sidewalk, slipping and falling.
For the most part, that's right. And but there's a difference when you get into the audio side of things, because in a two-party consent state, you can't just willy-nilly be recording conversations of people. And certainly even in the public square, two people can have a private conversation.
Right.
Doesn't make it automatic. Oh, you were standing by the fountain by City Hall, so I came right over and I surreptitiously recorded your conversation with your friend. You can't
because
do
your
that.
conversation is like this.
Right.
It's not visible by 1,000 people in 1,000 places.
You don't have a bullhorn.
Right. So, but visually, you are visible to everybody when you're walking around in the public place.
Right. And the truth is, probably a lot of the videos that you see up on various social media, some of them probably were obtained outside the parameters of the law.
You think?
Maybe nobody objected, or when they found out later, they didn't care.
Well, I know I've seen a lot of TikTok videos where people tape their grandmas.
Right.
And I only wish my mother still spoke English. She's kind of, as she's become older and older, she's lost her English a great deal. She's 96. But the stuff she says, and she would not know I'm videoing her when I'm videoing her.
She has no filter anymore.
No, she has no filter. The filter's gone. She didn't have much of a filter to begin with, but she has. You've known her 30 years, but she has lost any and all filter, and it's hysterical.
Well, she's 96 years old. I guess she's got
she's
the right
earned
to
the
use it.
right.